In the past month, a question I've actually been asked some variation of multiple times is actually which troops will participate when my city is attacked. And whilst that might seem like quite an obvious question, and maybe it is to some players, with how rare actually being attacked on your city is nowadays, with the current state of the game, it is a bit of a grey area to quite a lot of players, so I thought I'd make a video just going over the exact details of how this works. So when it comes to defending your city generally, obviously with say solo attacks, you are limited by your army size. With rallies, you're limited by your army size plus your rally size. With city defense, you're going to be limited by your maximum troops involved in defensive battle, which you can find here on your wall or also in your military grounds up here in the top left. Yes, I will happily share what is in my city. I don't really care. It just is what it is. So you'll be limited by this, and potentially also your reinforcement capacity, which you can find for your embassy, which is where alliance members of yours can, of course, send you troops to help you defend. Now, for me, my max troops involved in defensive battle is quite low, considering the level of my account at least. You can quite easily make this number reach up to above 16 million without that much effort. If you hover it here, you'll be able to see the sources of it. So it'll be 12 million at base here, and you can, through the iron defense tree, quite easily make that exceed 16 million. So this research here, you'll have 3 million from there, and then you'll also get quite easily accessible additional amounts from the likes of Simon and his awakening, Kravras's weapon, if applied to Kravras, will give quite a sizable chunk, up to 1 million at 4-star, and I believe 400k at base as passive max defense troops. You can get it from photo shards you can see there, and probably the biggest jump you can get for it are these new SP appearances, which give each 2 million at 4 gold rarity. So the elephant one here is a lot harder to get, obviously, since it's only through CCS, but you will see max accounts now with these troop specific ones at gold, and they will have max defense troop limits of 22, 23 million through that. And the topic of this video is how does it work exactly if you have more troops than your actual max defense troops limit? Because obviously only this amount of troops will be able to participate in a fight itself, and any troops excess to that will then be left over and will not participate in the fight whatsoever. So if you had, say, 60 million troops here, so you've built a trap account, you have like 8 mil T4, and then you just have 50 million T1s, and you're intending to just constantly tank with those T1s, you will still be limited by your max defense troops. So building well in excess of that is somewhat pointless, honestly, and for reasons I will explain, honestly, can be quite detrimental when it comes to defending your city effectively. So in my situation here, I'm a 0 castle, so it's not really relevant to me since my total troops number is lower than my max defense troops are. But if I had, say, 80 million troops and I had 4 million of every single troop tier listed here, then that would obviously be a very different situation for me. So the way this works with how your total troops will be distributed into your max defense troops is it will work from the highest tier of troop down. So it will fill all the T5s into the max troop defense limit. Then with any excess space, it will then fill all the T4s. And then if there's any space left over, it will fill all the T3s and so on and so on. If there is a split of troop types that exceeds the max defense troops, then it will always look to equally distribute them. So in that 4 million of each troop tier scenario, there would be approximately 3.5 million of T5 Imp, T5 Cav, T5 Spear, and T5 Bow going into this 14 mil max troop limit. So even if I had, say, like 15 mil T5 Imp, 10 mil T5 Spear, and just 5 mil T5 Cav, 5 mil T5 Bow, even though I have more of the Imp than Spear, there wouldn't be a number bias to them through that at all. It only goes off filling those troops into this troop limit. What this does, of course, mean is that if you have a lot of high tier troops in your castle and you're trying to tank solos or rallies, for example, you may potentially want, say, meat shield of a lower troop tier for your front line, or potentially just manipulate your defensive army to help you defend better. And this comes back to what I was saying about how having huge amounts of excess troops beyond your max defense troops can actually be a bit of a negative. Because in this situation, if I had, say, 21 million troops here, I would then be able to manipulate my defensive army a lot easier than I would be able to if I had, say, 40 million. So as a simple example as a means to visualize this, say I had 7 million T4 Imp, 7 mil T4 Cav, and 7 mil T4 Spear, and I had no other unit types in my castle whatsoever, and I had this exact same max troop defense limit. In a scenario where I got rallied, and I looked at the guy rallying me, and I saw, say, the Cav defense chest piece, I saw the Kingsguard neck, the Cav attack neck, and the Cav health neck, I saw a Layla Lord. It's probably a pretty safe bet in that scenario that that guy's going to be rallying me with mono Cav. So in that situation, all the infantry in my castle would be a bit of a net negative, because of course they're just going to deal significantly less damage to them through the counter system, but also if they're getting hit at any point, they're going to die significantly quicker than cavalry, which will go neutral rather than getting countered, or of course spearmen, which will counter those cav rather than being countered like infantry would. So what I could do in that situation is send out all 7 mil of my T4 infantry, either with reinforcements, with rally fills, out to gathering nodes. I could garrison people, I could send them to reinforce a great city if it's in something like KBK. There are many ways you can, of course, get troops out of your castle. That fiery mines even counts. And then I would be left with only my spearmen and my cavalry, and I'd still be filling out my defense limit. I'd have manipulated my defensive army to put myself in the best position possible to actually defend that rally successfully. If I had instead, say, like 15 mil T4 Imp and 15 mil Cav, 15 mil Spear, that wouldn't be possible, and I would effectively be forced to defend that rally with infantry. I wouldn't be able to put myself in that good of a position to actually defend that. On a similar note, if I was, say, defending in like Spear Cav, and I had 5 mil of each melee troop T4, and then I had 2 mil of each melee troop T3, and I had the same max defense limit, I'd want to evacuate all the T3 Imp, all the T3 Cav, but then even then, I'd be slightly above my max troop limit still, so I'd be at maybe 17 mil troops, and if there's 5 mil of each T4 in that situation, that none of the T3s would ever actually get into the defensive army whatsoever. So to actually get my T3s in that situation to participate and actually meat shield my T4s in my front line, I'd have to evacuate a further 4 5 mil T4 just to get those T3s into the fight. So all in all, this is something that you're definitely going to want to have to be cognizant of when you're actually troop building, because if you do go too crazy with it, you may well put yourself in a very disadvantageous situation to either defend against solos or rallies, and you may well find yourself getting caught out of that unless you're smart with it. So for most people, generally I'd advise to be a zero castle anyway, where you can just hide all your troops at will, so you can just hide from defending against rallies that will definitely beat you. But if you do build above this limit, I would probably only build to what you can blank or close to that above your max defense troops, just so you can manipulate your defensive army where it is necessary. If you're like a max account and you just don't care and you'll have a full T5 defense and no one will be able to win rallies on you anyway, I guess it doesn't overly matter. And you will just want huge amounts of excess troops to deal with continuous troop losses over and over and over again, the likes of CCS or GB or whatever. But for those of us who have to think and have to worry about the possibility of being attacked, this is something that we're going to want to keep in mind.